Welcome to all. In this video we will see the concept of Linux. Okay, so this is the third unit of your subject. I'm just skipping second unit as of now, and with respect to first unit you have one more algorithm to learn, that is round robin. With the example I just wanted to make separate video for that, and with respect to theory I have already uploaded in the previous videos, but the solved example I will make a separate video as soon as possible, and along with that I just include two solution for the the assignments whatever I have given, because some of you have approached me with respect to the steps and some of you have done some minor mistakes as well. So I will upload a separate video as soon as possible, but as of now you can concentrate on this particular subject, this particular concept I can say, and it is one of the beautiful concept. It is a beautiful unit actually, because when we deal with Linux and when we deal with the operating systems, practical knowledge should be available. So as of now I don't know how many of you are using Linux, but most of you are familiar with Windows. It may be 7 XP or 8 or 10. Okay, but Linux, maybe some of you are familiar with Ubuntu, but I don't know how many of you have experimented on Linux operating system. There are so many flavors of Linux operating system, and we usually, when I was a student, I had so many flavors of Linux, actually Linux operating system, because of its simplicity or ease of use, or I can say for the security purpose, or the flexibility given by the Linux is way better than rest of the operating system which are available in the world. Okay, so they say that Linux is a community of open source Unix like operating system that are based on Linux kernel. Okay, so when we hear the concept of open source, that means whatever the software they build or whatever the operating system they build, entire code set will be available. See, you have to remember one thing. See, for example, if you are coding or if you are developing any application, it always remember, when you code, definitely you become greedy, isn't it? When I develop applications, when I have developed some Android applications and web applications in my college days, so I was a greedy. I did not like to share my code to the world because it was my hard work. No, we think like that, isn't it? But these people, those who have rolled out Linux operating systems and applications to Linux operating system, they are not greedy. They, whatever the code they put, whatever the idea they put or algorithm they design, the code will be rolled out to the entire public so that public can experiment on those code. And they are great. Those people are great actually, because they give whatever the ideas, because building some application is not easy, or designing some algorithm is not easy, or coding some entire application is not that easy, or designing the entire operating system is very difficult. It is not at all easy. But whatever the code they put, or whatever the ideas they put on that operating system, entire code set, entire algorithm, or entire lines of code will be available on the internet for the public, so that they can download or they can install or they can experiment on those code. That is the reason why I said they are great. Okay, so those kind of things are called open source. So whenever you have the source code, whenever you have the entire code set, when you have the access to each and every corner of the software or the operating system, then such kind of operating system or such kind of application can be said as open source. Okay, so Linux is one of them. So whatever the code you require for Linux, it is available on the internet, or you can download it from their official website as well. Okay, so that is the reason why they say open source. Okay, so it was initially released by Linus Torvalds, okay, on September 17, 1991. Okay, because of his name Linus, the Linux has came into existence. So we for the explanation I just say Linux, but you can pronounce it as like Linux also. Okay, because his name was Linus Torvalds. Okay, because of that word the Linux has came into existence. You have to remember like that. Now whenever I say operating system, how exactly those design, no how you are exactly designing the operating system. So in the previous video I said it is an interface between hardware and user, isn't it? It is a middleman. Operating system is like a middleman. So in the design, or in the picture, you can say the hardware is the core component, isn't it? After hardware you have kernel, after kernel you have shell, after shell you have some applications or utility applications. Fine. Now kernel is nothing but it is again it deals with the hardware as well as the user. Fine, it is a middleman. In depth we will see what is a kernel, but as of now, while looking at the image or the circulars, you can see that after hardware you have kernel. Now after kernel, what you have? After kernel you have shell. Shell is nothing but say bash shell. There are so many different types of shell. Okay, C shell or bash shell, or something like a C corn shell or B shell, C shell. There are so many such kind of shells are available. In depth we can learn later. But after this particular kernel you have shell. After shell, top of shell, you have applications, whatever the application or end user application or third party application you use, or the install, that is a application or user level applications. Okay, if you have this particular lab session, or if you have whenever the college starts, I will manually show you how exactly Linux look like. Or if you are new to Linux, definitely I will show you. But if you are already familiar with Ubuntu, or if you are familiar with the Linux operating system, that is well and good. Okay, I can show you how exactly you can install also if you are very new to this Linux. But it is safe. Okay, almost 90-95% of servers are running under Linux for its security and simplicity as well as flexibility of operating system. No one, actually most of the people are not relying on the rest of the the rest of the operating systems which are available in the world. I don't want to name them, as I am rolling out this video for the public. I am not going to name, but I hope you know what are the rest of the operating system which are available. But Linux has got more flexibility and it is very easy to use. You have to remember like that. And in the right hand side you can say hardware, operating system and end user. So operating system lies between hardware as well as end user. So from the point of view of end user, if he wants to access hardware via operating system, he can access. Hardwares are nothing but CPU, memory or hard drive, and operating system, say they have listed out some operating system: Windows, Apple, OS, and say Linux. Fine. So this is the overall idea I just wanted to give for the introduction purpose. Fine. Next, what is Linux? So you can ask yourself, what is Linux? Okay. The first one is, it is a Unix like operating system. Now definitely you will ask one question, sir, you are explaining each and everything. Okay, what do you mean by Unix? Isn't it? You will ask this question, right? So we will see Unix. What is Unix in depth? It is a project actually developed by Bell Laboratories. Okay, Bell Lab. Okay, so that is a laboratory which is available, and they go for this open source and this kind of operating system. They have their own standalone projects which are being developed each and every time. Okay, so I will say what you mean by Unix, but as of now you can think it is a Unix like operating system. Okay, so it should be open source. It should be secure. It should be secure. It should be accessible, and it should be flexible. So many criteria which you have to follow to get a better operating system. You have to remember like this. Okay, the next thing is multi-user, multitasking, and multi-processor. So Linux supports all these things. Using Linux, you can go for multi-user, you can go for multitasking, and you can also go for multi-processing or processor thing. Next, it has X Windows GUI. So the resemblance of Windows will be available for Linux in some of the flavors. So that if you are very new to Linux, it should not harm you, or it should not make you confused. You should not be in dilemma that how exactly you can use the operating system without knowledge of it. You don't need to worry much. The graphical user interface given by the Linux is way better, far better, I can say. Okay, so that is the reason why they say that it has the X Windows GUI. Next, runs on multiple hardware platforms. It requires some of actually, see, they say that it is a multiple hardware platforms, but when you go for the memory, so Windows use NTFS file system, but when it comes for Linux, you have to go for ext4 journaling file system. So file system with respect to memory, with respect to drives, with respect to file architecture, with respect to the overall idea of operating system, they differ. But based on the difference, they go for separate hardware also. Hardware accessibility should be there for each and every operating system. You have to think like that. You can visualize. I will give so many examples for this particular unit. You don't need to worry, because personally I used so many flavors of operating systems which are coming under Linux. Okay, so ultimately you should go with respect to commands instead of going for GUI. If you are very well, or if you are very fast, if you are very active with respect to our commands, command line arguments, you will be in the next level. That is the thing. Fine. The last point is source code is available. That is what I said in the previous slide. So when you have the actual algorithm, actual code, actual steps involved to build some application or operating system, if it is available, entire code set is available for you, then it is nothing but source code or open source. Okay, so this is nothing but Linux. Okay, now free and open source software separate. Concepts are available. See, in the textbook you have so many paragraphs of English statements. Ultimately you have to remember this much. So it is a open source is nothing but it is simple. When programmers can read, distribute and change the code will be mature. Fine. People can adapt it, fix it, debug it. How people can in here people means public. When you have code, when you roll out the entire code set to the public, definitely they can experiment on that code, they can debug it, they can fix it, or they can enhance the feature with respect to the code, isn't it? Say for example, I ask you to write a program to add two numbers. Say what you do, you go for, say for example, dummy one program, something like int a int b or int a comma b. Next you read two values for a and b and you try to add it and you try to print it and you roll out the entire code to the internet. If that is the case, say for example, after once you roll out that particular thing to the internet, what I do, I will download that code, I will manipulate the code, I just give some graphical user interface to that, I will make that code as some application and I again upload it to the internet. What happened now? I have taken your source code, I manipulated it, or I have enhanced the feature, or I have given some feature to that particular code and I rolled out to the public. That means whatever the code you have given to the internet, it is open source, isn't it? Such kind of, you have to think in that way. Fine. Now the software will be more flexible and of a better quality than software that has been developed using the conventional channel. So because when you have the flexibility, when you have the code, then you don't need to worry much. You can directly, so many people can test it, isn't it? Whatever the code you have gone for, if you have any bugs or if you have any problems with respect to code, when you roll out that code, the other people will download it and they experiment on it. They may find the solution to the problem. They will again upload it again so that you can get to know that what exactly the concept, isn't it? In the same fashion, see GitHub. I don't know how many of you know about GitHub. So many people will be putting the software, codes to that GitHub so that any people can install it, or any people can download it and upload their own code. Isn't it? In the same fashion, this open source works. Okay, the open source initiative started to make this clear to the commercial world, and very slowly commercial vendors are starting to see the point. So when it was a new thing, everyone had some doubt, everyone was thinking whether it will click or not. But when people saw the actual idea, when people got the flavors of Linux, they got attracted to Linux more compared to rest of the operating system which are available. Okay, these are some of the theoretical concepts they have listed out. Now you have one more concept called BSD, or Berkeley Software Distribution. It's a discontinued operating system based on Research Unix. Okay, developed and distributed by Computer System Research Group, or CSRG, at the University of California, Berkeley. Okay, the term BSD commonly refers to its descendants including FreeBSD, OpenBSD, NetBSD and DragonFly BSD. So these are these operating systems are actually discontinued, but if you want to experiment on your own laptop or own system, you can download these things from the internet and you can try. And almost all these operating systems are command based or command line based. And I want to give I want to ask one question to you all. Can you how many of you know that what is the size of the operating system? Okay, if it is a class, then it will be very, very beautiful, because this particular unit is more beautiful actually to explain. I can show you actually the actual concepts of Linux instead of going for theoretical concepts. Okay. Now I want you to know what is the actual size of an operating system, and I want also to know what is the smallest available, or in terms of size, smallest available operating system in the world. I just wanted you to know, or to search in the Google, try to get to know the concept. It is very beautiful. Okay, understanding the operating system, experimenting on the operating system, installing, and you can go for multi-booting or dual booting. In the same system, you may have Windows as well as Linux. You may have Windows has as well as 3 or 4 flavors of different Linux. It may be Ubuntu, Fedora, Red Hat, or Puppy Linux, or Mint. You have so many n number of, it may be Deepin, Zorin, and you can go for say you have one more. I'm not remembering the names, but you have n number of, okay, mini OSs. You will be having so many mini OSs which will run only under command line. Entire system can be accessed using command line instead of going for a mouse or cursor or graphical user interface. So to explain, there are so many concepts in Linux. If I start explaining, it will take more time, but as of now I will just stick to the points whichever I have prepared for you to understand. Okay, now BSD was initially called Berkeley Unix because it was developed, the source code of the original Unix developed in Bell Labs. That the same thing I said, Unix also developed in Bell Labs in 1980s. Okay, Linux has came into existence in 1991, but in 1980s only they started this kind of BSD concept. Okay, the total cost of ownership, or TCO, includes the purchase price of a particular asset plus operating system cost over the asset's lifespan. In Linux flavors also, there are some Linux operating system which cost you, say, something like Red Hat. If it is for commercial thing, then it requires money for. So if you are installing that Red Hat in industries or in a large commercial area, then you may be asked to give some money, or pay some money for that operating system. So that is also one of the idea you have to, or one of the way you have to understand. That is all, that is also available. Looking at the total cost of ownership is a way of assessing the long term value of a purchase to a company or individual. So it is a total cost to the ownership. So when you buy some operating system, how exactly you can make use of it, and how exactly the usage or benefits of operating system, you have to remember like that. You have to understand that. That is the thing. That is nothing but TCO. And next thing is TCA, or total cost of acquisition. Okay, is a managerial accounting concept that includes all the costs associated with the buying goods, service, and assets. Ultimately, it is not just for individual, it is actually for the company. Okay, when you have n number of systems, when you want n number of copies of operating system for installing the to install the operating system in rest of the systems which are available in the company, and total cost which are put together to install all those operating system in the system, PCs or laptops which are available in the company, and what is the cost, how to maintain it, and assets, whatever the assets they talk about company, all these things will be taken into consideration for the calculation of total cost. Fine. Generally, it is the net price plus other costs needed to purchase the item and get it to the point of use. Ultimately, they say, see, these sentences are available. They are trying to say that what exactly the total cost. Say, for example, if I want to give the real-time example, say if I ask you to cook something, say for example, to cook biryani, veg biryani. See, I'm a vegetarian, that's why I'm saying veg biryani. If that is the case, see, what is the total cost which will be put to make a veg biryani? You need rice and all the ingredients you need. You have to go to market. If you don't have any ingredients in home, you have to go to market. You may take your own vehicle, it may be bike or car, or you may take auto or bus, or you can go for by walk also, it is possible. So ultimately, you have to understand the total cost. If you're going for using bike, the fuel price, or if you're going with the in a car, then separate fuel price will be there. So you have to take it everything into consideration, isn't it? So overall total cost can be calculated like this. For each and every ingredients, you have to calculate the money Isn't it? So if you say, for example, if you don't have the plates in your home, if that is the case, see, I'm just giving one example, don't laugh, because there may be a possibility, if you are very new to that home, or if you are going for say, housewarming ceremony, if that is the case, you don't have any plates or anything, glasses, or which if it is not available in the home, then definitely you have to buy it, you have to bring from outside, again you have to spend more money, isn't it? So you have to consider each and everything. Total consideration has to be there to understand the total cost, isn't it? In the same fashion, this is just an example, but in terms of company also, they will think their own level, they go for their own level of understanding. It may be accounting or research for closing things, so they need costs for each and everything. That is nothing but TC. That is the one concept. Now, beginning of Linux, so some histories can be understood. So in Unix developed out of multi project iteration at the Bell laboratory, so they will be keep on experimenting on Unix concepts. Okay, so computer science research center, so there is a separate research center was there. They try to develop so many flavors of operating system, different experiments they have conducted to build that Unix. Okay, the developers working on multi at Bell Labs and elsewhere were interested in building a multi-user operating system with the single level storage, dynamic linking, and they just wanted one hierarchical file system. So they were experimenting on these criteria to get a better operating system in Bell Labs. Okay, now research and development at Bell Labs, or later now it has become AT&T, so continued with the Unix system laboratories developing versions of Unix. So different versions of Unix they started with that, and they got the partnership with the Sun Microsystem, that is a separate area, separate system, separate company that would be widely adopted by commercial Unix vendors. So these are the some of the beginnings, say for example history of Unix, I can say. After Unix, once they started to experimenting on the different kind of operating system, which included file system, different kind of file system, or single level, or storage, or dynamic linking concepts, once they succeeded with that, then Linux came into picture. The Linux came into existence later on. Fine. So this is the basic idea of, or history of, Unix. Okay, now after that Linux came into picture, it has came into market. Unix raised important question for developers, but it also remained proprietary in its earliest iteration. So when they started the experimenting in the basic level, or in the initial level, so they had one flavor of Linux operating system. Okay, after that the developers, they put some pressure on developers to enhance the feature. Once they enhance the feature, they wanted more features and more ideas or more concepts which has to be there in the operating system. They asked the developer to increase the performance. They asked the developer to install the operating system in the different hardware platforms. So there are so many testing concepts are available when you develop something. Okay, the next chapter of its history is thus the story of how developers worked within the against or create the free open source alternatives. So how developers, what is the effort they put on building the operating system, that is a separate concept. Okay, now Richard was a central figure among the developers who were inspired to create non-proprietary alternatives to Unix. While working at MIT Artificial Intelligence Laboratory at that time itself in 1984, okay, he initiated work on GNU project. Okay, it is not Unix actually, but GNU is also a project. Eventually in 1984 they left the lab, and he distributed GNU components as a free software. When it was developing, there was a concept of cost. Then after that, once they separated from there, then they went for free software movement. Okay, the GNU components. Now it is available for free. You don't need to pay much. Okay, so that is the origin, that is the concept of origin. Okay, now you have something called Linux kernel. The kernel or Linux kernel is a free and open source, monolithic, modular, next multitasking, Unix like operating system kernel. Okay, it is a set of code. See, kernel is actually developed using C language. Okay, that is the reason why I said C is the base for almost everything. We usually neglect C language. We say that no, Python is better, or some other languages are very better. Swift can be said as very better language, or R, or say for example, some of you say that Java is better or C++ is better than C. So many people say their own idea of representing, but C is the base. Kernel, most of the kernels are built using C language. Fine, C is very strong actually. Okay, I just wanted to say this. Okay, the kernel was conceived and created in 1991 by Linus. Again, Linus has gone for it, for his i386 based PC. So he had i386 based PC at that time in 1991. It was soon adopted as the kernel for the GNU operating system, which was created as an open source and free software. So that means you will be having the source code in the internet. You can download it and you can manipulate if you want, or you can see the source code of operating system which was rolled out to the public. Linux is deployed on a wide variety of computing systems, such as embedded devices or mobile devices, including its use in the Android operating system also, personal computers, servers, mainframes, and supercomputers. So then Linux has gained the popularity, and people or the public started using Linux, and it installed Linux in each and everything. Once it has gained the popularity, people understood the power of free software, and they understood the power of Linux, and they understood the power of security or flexibility or reliability or accessibility given by the Linux, and they got carried away with respect to the operating systems. Okay, so these are the some of the information I just wanted to share. In the next video I will go for the features of Linux, and we will see one by one, each and everything we will see one by one in depth. Okay, so if time permits, or if you are available in the college, I will show you how exactly you can install operating system also. How can you go for partition, how can you deal with the file systems, exe for journaling file system, how exactly you can go for dividing the memory with respect to the operating system, and what is the difference between Windows and Linux. Practically you can see how exactly you can differentiate between the different operating systems while installing on the system. So not now, in future, I don't know when college starts and what happens, that's a separate part of story. But if it is available, or if time permits, definitely I will show you how to install also. Okay, so I just wanted to say this much, these things. So let me wind up the concept here, let me wind up the video here. So if you have any doubt, you can come to me, no issues, or you can go to internet, you just search for the different flavors of Linux operating system, go for what is the actual size of one operating system, see what is the minimum size available, or which is the smallest operating system available in the internet. Try to search all these informations, it will be available. It is important also for your knowledge purpose. You have to keep all these things in your brain, so that if someone asks, you should be able to say it. Fine. Okay, you can go for it, you can check it. You definitely, it will be better for you, because you will get the rough idea of Linux. Fine. So let me wind up the video here. Thanks for watching. So the rest of the concepts can be seen in the next video. Okay, thank you.